Thank you, Norman. That was a very touching introduction. And before we go further, I'd like to thank the LSA and UK for this fine institute. It's been going extremely well. I felt very fortunate to be here. So I want to thank the UK staff and the LSA for this institute. And I remember 2 years ago in Saliko Komofone's office with Rusty, Barrett, and Fabiola Henry, and they invited us to this institute. And I was very pleased that both Salikoko and myself, we could be here because our work for the past decade or so have been, in many ways, complementing each other's work. And also the work of Enoch Abo that Norvan mentioned has been also essential to our work together. And so it's an honor to share this forum lecture stage with my old professor, Mark Stidman, that I haven't seen for years. So thank you, Mark, for being here. And Julia Hirschberg, who gave the first forum lecture, was a mentor of mine when I was in my early 20s, before I knew what linguistics was. So at Bell Labs, at Maryhill Bell Labs, when I was a computer scientist. And it was very moving to see Julia here after those many years. So I'm very pleased to have shared the stage with two of my idols. So the title is a bit puzzling for those of you who don't know about revolutions. Many of you will know about July 4th. Many of you will know about July 14th, which is today, which is the French Revolution, Bastille Day, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. But very few people will know about November 18th. When I teach at MIT, when I have big classes, maybe 1 or 2 students will know what November 18 means. Yet, if you think of what we did in Haiti on that date, we fought against an army that was led by Napoleon's own brother-in-law, and we won that war. And it was the only war in history where an army of former enslaved Africans not only managed to win the Napoleonic army, yet we did something that neither the French nor the Americans did. Because at the time when we became independent in Haiti, November 18, 1803, both the French claiming liberté, égalité, fraternité, and both the Americans calling for happiness for all, they still had slaves. And they were adamant that they would keep Haiti under the dominion to prevent Haiti from becoming a black sheep. So why don't we know about November 18th? And my late colleague, Michel wrote a book called Silencing the Past, where he explains the power of, how power manufactures history. And I think that the reason why we don't know about November 18th might be the same reason why we still have in linguistics this idea that Creoles are, to some degree, lesser languages emerging from pidgins. And both of these silencing, the silencing of Haitian history in terms of what it accomplished for human liberty, human equality, and the silencing of certain languages like Creole languages, I think, that's my hunch in my work, is that they are rooted in the same attitude towards humanity, the idea that they are lesser humans than others. And back at the time when Creoles were being created in the 17th, 18th century, and at the time when the Haitians, back then, the enslaved Africans were fighting for the freedom, they were considered lesser humans. For the same reason why they were being viewed as lesser humans, the languages, what they were creating as languages, had to be viewed as lesser languages, because back then, if you remember the work of Humboldt, Kant, Montesquieu, all of these philosophers, they were convinced that you could use language as an index of humanity. So therefore, if language could measure how human you were, and if you were deemed to be a beast of labor, your linguistic creation, your culture, your religion could not be viewed on the par of European cultural manifestations. So that's my thesis. So this is a famous icon in the north of the country. It's a statue commemorating the Battle of Vertières, where the Haitians won against slavery and colonization, when both the US and the French were still upholding hierarchies of humanity. So what I want to appeal to you here, and for me it's a unique opportunity to call to all of us progressive linguistics colleagues, it first understand to be reflexive in our approach to Creole languages and to other, not just Creoles as languages alone, but also to other local languages, including, say, sign languages as well, which I'll get back to soon. And my late colleague, Mervyn Allain, put it very eloquently when he wrote back in 94 that those theories that keep linking Creoles to pidgins and that account for them through simplification are exactly those that have kept Creole languages among the most stigmatized languages of the world. And what I want to, what we'll be looking at here is this set of claims, including in our textbooks, that still maintain that dogma that Creoles evolved from pidgins. And I want to then see the real-world impact of these views on the lives of those speakers of Creole languages. And here, I have to go biographical. I have to go personal, because as a Haitian linguist who grew up in Haiti, and I grew up for the first 20 years of my life, I was convinced that my native language, Haitian Creole, was not a language. I was convinced that it was a half language. I would say I speak one language and a half. And French was a one language, and Haitian Creole was a half language. And up to actually that evolution, my realizing that my native language was a real language happens at Bell Labs, actually, with Ida Hirschberg. Because at Bell Labs, I was actually writing programs to process, to do text-to-speech, and to do parsing for French and for English. We had a text-to-speech system that was mispronouncing French names, and I had to fine-tune this text-to-speech system to make it pronounce, say, Catherine Deneuve, not as Catherine Deneuve, but as Catherine Deneuve. And I realized that if I were doing it in Creole, it would also work. It would work even better because of the Creole spelling system, which is phonemic. And I got to think that Creole has rules. There's a phonology. Then I learned about syntax at Bell Labs, writing programs for parsing. And I kept thinking about my own native language, Haitian Creole. I said, well, I could do the same for Haitian Creole. It has rules. It has noun phrases and verb phrases and complementizers and prepositions. But when I was a kid, I could not use my language at school. Those signs were quite popular in Haiti, and they're still popular today. Signs forbidding children to use the native Creole language. And what's paradoxical is that on paper, which I'll talk about soon, on paper, the language is official. Not only it's official on a par with French, but it's recognized as the one language that all Haitians speak. Yet, most schools in Haiti still forbid the use of Creole in the classroom, except in classes where you have to teach the kids to take exams at Creole, because they have to take one for their baccalaureate. So therefore, the kids have to learn to write Creole, but yet in classes of physics, mathematics, they cannot use Creole. So now I want to go into our field and see what have we done to poison this well that most Creole speakers are still drinking from. And I'm going to cite a paper, one of the most cited papers in Creole studies, at least in the in the 70s and 80s. It's a paper by Wynnum. And here, what Wynnum says is something that many Creoles have been saying since, which is that because of Creoles emerging from pidgins, and given that pidgins are very reduced language, almost non-language, proto-language-like, there is reason to believe that languages with such pidgin origins might be a handicap to the speakers. Okay? So this is what Wynnum says. From what we know of the role of language in instructive development, one would expect that the speakers of these primitive Creoles to be intellectually handicapped. Okay? So this is the starting point. Now I want to give you a map of that revolution that I'm trying to advocate for the past decade or so. And here I'm going to cite one of my idols, Frantz Fanon, who, as a psychiatrist, understood some of the roots of both self-hatred but also of white supremacy. And what Frantz Fanon said very clearly, he was not shy in his words, is that sometimes social structures are rotten, and we have to look at the worm-eaten roots of the structure. That's what we have to try to get rid of. And that's what I'm trying to invite you to do here, together with me. And Foucault and other philosophers like Bourdieu have also said similar things, perhaps more politely. So what Foucault talks about often is this regime of truth, these cycles of interaction between power and knowledge, where power sustains particular types of knowledge and vice versa. And for us to be able to extract ourselves from this regime of truth, these paranoid cycles, it requires, I think, humility, but also courage, and also to do the hard work of getting rid of textbooks, certain textbooks. And this is the finish line. In case I don't get to, as Northern says, the argument is very long, but the finish line is that I would like us linguists, both students and senior linguists, to especially those of us who teach intro to linguistics, to be a bit more reflexive in the textbooks we choose and what they say about Creole languages, and perhaps do a bit of extra work to try to understand the impact of some of these claims on Creole speakers and other speakers of local languages. And eventually, since all of us, we care for languages, we want to care for those speakers as well who speak those languages, I think we all would agree that if we can use our field to help create a level playing field, it's a win-win, right? So this is what I would like to convince you towards the end, that maybe to do the extra effort to be more reflexive in our practice of linguistics. And here, I'm happy also to be inspired by a former colleague, actually a late colleague, Ken Hale, who was also a mentor to Northern Richards, who's in many ways pursued Ken Hale's mission. And Ken Hale was very clear that what matters in linguistics is not only understanding the syntax, the morphology, semantics of languages, but also is to see to what degree the work we're doing can actually be integrated in a meaningful way in the lives of those who speak those languages that we study. Okay, I think that's a very decent call to our field. So now I'm going to go into more details about how linguistics has played a major role in geopolitics, and especially through education. Okay, so the basic question here is, we study all these languages, but what we have to understand is the fact that many of these languages that we study, that we do field work on, that we write papers about, that we talk about in our research agendas, they are not being used by the speakers as a way for them to progress in the society, right? So in fact, most communities of what we study, they are still being impoverished through education. Why? Because the same language that we study, they are excluded in the school system. So you have kids, you have students, UNESCO says about 40% of students globally are still being taught in the language that blocks access to education, to equal opportunity, and to human rights. And so my call here is, how can we turn our linguistics knowledge into action to try to remedy this dire situation? And it's a tough challenge. So my colleague in Jamaica, Hubert Devonich, he has a book called Language and Education, where he understands that this is really a global challenge that affects not only Creole speakers, but speakers throughout the world, Africa, Latin America, Asia, etc. Okay, and the data from UNESCO are very clear. Again, the 40% number, 40% of students have to study in the language that they don't speak, and most of them live in poverty. And the reason is pretty clear that those students who have to study in a foreign language, they simply cannot be successful in the schooling, and therefore they are mired in poverty. And so one might say, well, I'm a linguist, so therefore why should I bother about these real-world issues of economics and education? But there's a paradox, right? The paradox is that I think it's an axiom for most of us that languages are all worthy of study. They reflect this universal capacity for human language. So that we have to ask, to what degree does our faith in linguistics differs from the way that the languages are used in the real world? So my point is that there is a gap, there is a major gap between our core universalistic egalitarian assumptions about language with a big L, and the fact that up to today there is still these brutal hierarchies among the uses and misuses of language in the world. And actually yesterday I was reminded that even here at the LSA Institute, there was a question that was raised at the panel on implicit bias, by Oda von Gitti, who asked, as a signer, is the one signer here in the Institute, he asked, how come it's all about spoken languages? Where are the courses on sign languages? Why are there so few of us here at the Institute? So I think we have to admit that given the size of this audience, and for there to be just one signer, that also means something about our own practice, our own belief about sign languages, right? So we've made progress, I think, because now sign languages are no longer reviled as mimicry. I think there's a consensus among us that they are full-fledged languages. But if so, why the discrepancy between the numbers of courses about spoken languages, but so few, actually, no courses about sign languages? So something for us to, there are two, okay. There are two, but in terms of signers here, right? So how many signers are there here? Well, signers. Okay. Okay, so but still though, I think there's a discrepancy, right? So thank you for correcting my data. But my point was that there is a discrepancy in terms of, okay. So, and I'm going to go further and look at the fact that these practices are also a challenge to human rights. So if you look at all kinds of treaties signed by United Nations, UNICEF, UNESCO, they all promote the use of all local languages. It's a right of children, of people with various handicaps, that they should be able to use the native language for education, for administration, for government, etc. Okay, so we have a problem. And now I'm going to go local and personal. I'm going to look at one case that has affected me personally, which is that of Haiti. And I'm going to cast Haiti here as a spectacular case of what I've called, following a colleague, Paul Dejean, linguistic apartheid. And I'm going to suggest that linguists have played a role in entrenching this apartheid, not only in Haiti, but in other communities of Creole speakers. But the facts in Haiti are so stark that I think we should take up them very seriously. So these are the facts. All Haitians speak Creole. Everyone in Haiti speaks Creole. And at most 10% speak French. If you take off French, speaking French as if being able to give jokes, to make love in French, to dream in French, I would say that maybe 3% speak French and hear French from the womb onward. Yet, French is still the primary of instruction. And this, of course, varies from 10% high school, only 1% as any college of education. And perhaps what's worse is that at all levels, what you get is rote learning, because kids, from the moment they enter the school system, what they learn to do is to map text to sound because they don't speak French. So what they learn to do from the very beginning is to read by just pronouncing letters, not really understanding what they're studying. And now, no wonder that the press keeps calling Haiti the poorest country in the West. And I would say that it's not the poorest country, it's the most impoverished country, because there is no country that's poor inherently. Countries have been impoverished. There was a time when Haiti was the pearl of the Caribbean, and when being Creole meant being rich. So we have to understand then what got Haiti so poor. And what I want to do now, I want to give you a visceral sense of what it means to be a kid in Haiti, going to school for the first time. A kid who comes from a Creole community, the sisters, the brothers, the friends, the parents all speak Creole, and they get to school, then they have to be socialized. And this is an example of how most Haitian children are being socialized in the school system. Let's see the sound. How do I get the sound? How do I get the sound into? Check that. I forgot. Okay, I have to turn on the microphone. Okay. Okay, so let me give you some feedback, some background as. So I'm going to shout. So go ahead. No. Okay. So I have to give some background anyway. So in Creole, there's a clear shibboleth that distinguishes Creole from French, which is that we don't have rounded vowels. So in most, well, some dialects do have rounded vowels, but most dialects spoken by monolinguals only have, so for bleu, you would say blé. For beurre, you would say bec. And also, actually, this example shows also that we don't have R in coda positions. So the R's in French that are in coda positions do not exist in Creole. You say bec for beurre. So voiture would be voiture. Okay. Right? Okay.
No, the HDMI doesn't have it too, unless you put it here. So maybe they need to use the message there. Yeah. If you can. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the previous one. Could you hear what's going on? Okay, because so the teacher keeps going at the students, couleur, and of course the kids vary they vary between couleur, they try, but in Creole you say couler. But what's for me what's sad is the fact that she never tells the children, look, in Creole you say couler, in French you say couleur. Now if you want to speak French with a Russian accent, you might say couleur. At no moment are the children being recognized as Creole speakers. And also, if you notice that even the teacher doesn't speak French properly, she says things like plastique est bleu, which you would say le plastique est bleu. And so the next example is even perhaps more striking. So this is a French class. This is a French class. And pay attention to what the teacher is focusing on. So the teacher is spending all this time focusing on this liaison rule, sortant voiture, which, as I can tell, in spoken French, there isn't such a rule that's applied consistently. You do have liaison, but typically in this context, you wouldn't be using liaison. So the teacher doesn't know French properly, but the teacher has learned a rule, liaison, that he thinks should be applied whenever you have a final T, and in this case, it's typically not applied. So what you have is this masquerade of education where the teacher and the students don't speak French properly, and the focus is on learning perfect French, of course, in quotes. And it's not just an issue for the school system, it's an issue for even for the justice system, because you have, everybody speaks Creole, but if you're a Creole speaker, you go to court, you're being tried in French, and you don't understand what's going on. You understand whether you're acquitted or not until you freed or until you go to jail. Then you know that you've been convicted. So now let's come back again to linguistics and see to what degree we linguists have helped create this situation where human rights are being violated on a daily basis for Creole speakers. So here we're going to do a bit of history, and the goal here is really for us to be reflexive in what we teach our students, in what we believe in what we assume in our research and teaching. But what you'll see is that many of these claims that Novel introduced as with that term that I've coined, is that, so some of these claims go back in history. And at least in the 19th century, linguists were very clear as to why they believe that Creole has to be exceptional. And for example, Sequentin was clear that Creoles are the way they are because the speakers have limited intelligence. So it was very straightforward. Lucien Adam, a French linguist, also believed that Creoles have the shapes they have because the Creole creators, the Africans, were like children in the capacity for language. And it's because of the grammatical habits they couldn't learn quote-unquote proper French grammar. This quote I like because it's perhaps the most explicit, where in that Dictionnaire des sciences anthropologiques, Lucien Vincent took Creoles to reflect the genius of a race that is linguistically inferior. So here, clearly, you see the link between language and race, which in the 19th century was normal science. That was, so if you look at Schleicher, Humboldt, this is what they believe, that language is an index of humanity. And since the Africans were perforce deemed inferior, therefore the languages have to be viewed as inferior. So now some of them might say, well, this is the 19th century, right? We're beyond that. This is the 21st century. We had Obama. We're progressive, so we don't believe that anymore. Well, let's see. So what we should ask is, are we linguists still neo-colonial? And I'm sorry to say that the answer is yes. Of course, not all of us, so here at the Institute, I've been so pleased to go to courses where Creoles are being studied as normal languages. So Fabiola Henry has a beautiful course on morphology that I'm really enjoying, and there is no hint there that these languages are somehow inferior. I was at the Study of Peasant Creole Linguistics meeting in Finland 2 weeks ago, and many young scholars are entering the field without those prejudices. But there are still journal articles being published that do maintain those hierarchies. And I'm going to show you perhaps some of the most spectacular claims that I view as still reflecting the 19th century view where Creoles have to be inferior. So this is perhaps the most famous Creolist, Derek Bickerton, who in the 70s and 80s was pushing this view that the pidgin to Creole cycle is like a mirror. It recapitulates the emergence of it's not for me to say that without laughing. But really, the view was that as a Creole speaker, when I speak Creole, my language, my mind is a reflex of early Homo sapiens. Because he viewed the pidgin to Creole cycle like the transition from proto-language spoken by Homo erectus and the earliest modern language was spoken by Homo sapiens at the early dawn of humanity. So for him, Creole languages are, as he puts it very poetically, missing linguistic fossils, which means that I myself, when I switch from English as a modern human and I switch back to speaking Creole, so so by speaking Creole, I can revert back to being a human fossil. Quite spectacular, right? So I could be in a circus. And actually, so the New York Times, John McWhorter, the New York Times repeat the same canard, right? So that Creoles most approximate some of the early languages. Creoles are the only languages that are studied again. Now this is the New York Times science section in 2001. That's pretty spectacular, I would say. So this is Reuters. Creoles is Haiti's language of broken French. The New Yorker last year, Haitian Creole is guttural French patois. And those claims go on and on. But now I want to focus on certain claims that have a direct impact on the use of Creole in Haiti's school system, for example. So here, what you see there is a quote from Albert Volman, which actually warns Creolists that watch out. You might want to use Creole in school, but because of the origins in pidgins, Creoles don't have enough morphological apparatus to be able to express their signs. And again, look at this, the part in italics. This is due to the very nature of Creoles, right? Because they are so morphologically reduced, they would have to borrow from the European language next door, and in doing so, the Creole will eventually dissolve. What's being predicted here is that Creole languages are destined to dissolve. This is language death. So this is the Creolist acting as a predictor of doom. Okay, so this is pretty serious. So now what I want to show you is how those claims have become normal science through our textbooks, right? So this is one of the textbooks that I've used in the past. This is O'Grady et al. And you can see that what's being presented here as a truism is the idea that Creoles, by definition, emerge from pidgin. So this is a pidgin. So when you have a context situation where you have different speakers from different languages, you get a pidgin, which is a rudimentary language, what Nicoton calls a proto-language. It has little grammatical rules and a small lexicon. Okay, and then you go from that to Creole, and the Creole now starts from what Nicoton called ab ovo, from the egg, from scratch, and then it expands its lexicon and its syntax. Okay, just 2 weeks ago, I got a new textbook. So this is the 7th edition of. So this is just this year. Published by MIT, and it's a textbook by Akmajian, Farmer, Bickmore, Demers, and Harnish. So I was very happy to get it because the first thing I did was to look at what this is about Creoles, and I've been in touch with Anne Farmer, who comes to MIT often. So I was very excited that this textbook at last would make a change, and it did. For example, if you look at the quote that's highlighted, it stresses that Creoles are full and distinct languages, stable, and they're as complex as any other language. Okay, so this is good news. And then it goes on to even highlight the fact that our attitudes about Creoles, when we view them as being inferior, these attitudes have an impact on the status and well-being of Creole speakers, and they do disservice to the field. So this is huge. This is perhaps the first textbook, I think, that recognizes what we linguists have done to those Creole speakers. But yet, even in this textbook, there's a chapter 7 on variation, there's a subsection on other language varieties, and this is where Creoles are placed. So basically what you see is that in spite of the positive, the well-meaning intent of giving more respect to Creoles, but still there's a dualism where you have other varieties versus, say, language change. So Creoles are not viewed as the outcome of language change, they are viewed as other. And so Creoles are still viewed as other, like Dragons and Pidgins. And Pidgins, again, as you see here, they are simplified with reduced vocabulary. And what I want to show you now is that those claims that make Creoles special in a lesser fashion, in a negative fashion, are also entrenched among Creole speakers, like myself, when I was in Haiti for the first 20 years of my life. Now, this is from Metellus, which is a late linguist and also a neurologist, and he basically was advising his compatriots, forget about Creole. Creole cannot help you do science because it's a reduced language. It deprives you of possibilities that fully developed languages offer, implying that Creoles are not fully developed. And then this is Raphael Confiant, a Creole speaker, well known as a writer in Martinique. And he says here, actually, again, this is one of these quotes that you have to work hard to keep a straight face when you read them, but I'll try. So it's a language that in which you cannot think abstractly. So you cannot do science, no philosophy. Then he goes on to say, we can indulge in Creole, make it express things that only a woman's innards can feel. So again, so if I were to switch that now from English to Creole, all the women here would melt. so I have superpowers, So again, So, and this is not in an obscure journal. This is published in the Chronicle of Higher Education. You know, this is a mainstream journal that claims that where someone is being interviewed and claims that Creoles cannot do math, cannot do science, but it can express things that, okay. Okay, so now key question, right? Now we need to do a bit of linguistics very quickly. So what's been claimed is that if you compare, say, Haitian Creole to English or French or Mandarin, what you find in the history of Creole are these abnormal discontinuities. You find breaks in transmission, which you don't find in the history of non-Creole languages. So what we have to ask is that true? I've written many papers that you can find on my website in the past 10, 15 years. This will be a very quick tour, just to show you how easy it is to get evidence to the contrary. It's not, I mean, it's one of these cases where you have to ask, linguists are so smart. How come for the past decades they keep to this truism that's not verified by data? So I'll give you a quick tour, and the data can be obtained from any dictionary or any website where there is Creole, either Jamaican Patois, Haitian Creole, Martinican Creole. It's easy to get the evidence, easy. So what we do is, first of all, there's this idea that a pidgin is macaronic. This is a term from Bickerton, meaning that it takes words from different languages, the ones that were in contact. It's like macaroni, where you get bits and pieces from various languages. And what I'm going to show is that, in fact, talking about macaronicity, English is way more macaronic than Haitian Creole, way more. And then there's this other idea that you get those structural breaks in Creole formation that you don't find elsewhere. That's what makes, so President Kaufman calls it abnormal transmission, because you get these huge breaks between the grammar and the lexicon. And I'm going to show that this is not true, that in fact it's very easy to see that patterns in Creole formation are quite analogous to patterns in the history of English, French, etc. So then we have to conclude that there cannot be an exceptional Creole formation process. It's all myths, prejudices that have stayed with us for the past 2 centuries, and now I think it's time we can do better. So again, I'm going to try to go very quickly on this data because it's all published already. And all of you know that the English lexicon, probably in your linguistics, you talk about beef and pork and pig, and it's a well-known fact that if you take a sample of English words, the majority of them will have non-Germanic ancestry, and some of it with French ancestry, Latin ancestry. So the bottom line is that the English lexicon is 65% non-Germanic. Now, if you look at Haitian Creole, and again, these are easy data to measure, most of the lexicon, including affixes, which as a Creole should have been ab ovo affixes that are created anew, yet all the affixes in Creole, including this abstract marker te that you affix to adjectives to make nouns. So this is an abstract marker. They're all from French. So this is a list here. And then we can even go further. If we look at what linguists like Dunn, for example, have called the gold standard of historical linguistics, and this gold standard in Dunn's paper in language is to be applied whenever coordinate sets can be reasonably established within a time depth of some 10,000 years. Okay, this is done in language. So now Creoles have emerged in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century. So this is well within this span of 10,000 years. Now, if you apply this method, and if you look at the vocabulary of Haitian Creole, for example, and the same can be done with other Creoles, all the basic vocabulary, numbers, kinship terms, color terms, body part terms, tense mood aspect markers, prepositions, determiners, pronouns, momentizers, most of the affixes in morphology, they all derive from French, right? So if one were to apply those tests blindly without this concept Creole in your head, you would have to conclude then that Creole is just, Haitian Creole is a descent from French, it's a Romance language. Anyway, so implications here: English, genetic, mostly non-Germanic for the lexicon. Haitian Creole, 90% of it is French. So English lexicon is Canadian Haitian Creole. So I like to say that then English has out-Creole Haitian Creole. Okay, so this is a classic reduction ad absurdum, right? See, if you come to an absurd conclusion, it simply means that you started from a false premise, from a problematic premise. And we can play the same game with Latin and French. So if you compare Latin with French along these parameters, word order, scrambling, case, article, Latin and French are opposite. Okay, so Latin has OV order, canonically, French has VO, etc. So you have opposite markings on these values, on these features. Now, if you go to French and Haitian Creole, they have the exact same values for these features. So again, in a way, if you were to say, look at the amount of discontinuity between Latin, French, and then Haitian Creole again is much better behaved than French. And this is not news. So Michel put it very clearly that linguistically, Romance languages have structures that are very different from Latin. And he says that Latin languages belong to a different typology than Latin. Okay, so implications, there is no fundamental difference between Creole formation, as in Haitian Creole, versus language change, as in English or Romance. And so what we've been advocating, Sadi Coco, Mufwele, Elokabo, and myself, and others, is this approach that's Reformitarian, which makes sense if you look at it in terms of population movement. So Latin seeded Romance languages via migration and conquest, the same way that now French has seeded the French-based Creoles in the Indian Ocean and the Caribbean, also via migration and conquest. And actually, Sadi Coco, in his lecture a couple of days ago here at the LSA Institute, even went all the way back to the evolution of language from Africa. So in essence here, what I want to finish with is that Creole is a normal human language. Those views that make Creoles lesser are a banal consequence of slavery and colonization. So that now going back to the idea of evolution, we need, at long last, to demystify the remnants of colonial history in our field, critical studies. Now I'm going to go back to history, go back to evolutions. So Dessalines was our first president. He was our founding father. And I like to, so I teach a course called Black Matters at MIT. And in that course, although it was called Black Matters long before there was a Black Lives Matter movement. We call it Black Matters at the time when Obama was president, and the kids were asking, do we need to talk about Black Matters now? We have a Black president. Well, now they flock to the course because they think it's about the Black Lives Matter movement. But Dessalines in Haiti might have been the first one to launch a Black Lives Matter movement globally before there was one. And remember that Haiti was independent. Haiti vanquished slavery at a time when both the French and the US, and actually most of the world, most of the European powers, were making money out of slavery, out of the labor of enslaved Africans. So what he did back then was spectacular, right? He showed that black people do matter, their lives do matter. And it was the only place in the New World where everyone was free, including black people. So this is the first constitution of Haiti. It says clearly, slavery is forever abolished, okay? And then he went even further, because he understood how race was political, so he was actually postmodern. He said that in Haiti, which is independent now, everyone is black. In fact, back then in Haiti, there were white people, there were Polish people who helped him fight the French. He said, well, let's get rid of these notions of color. Everyone in Haiti now is to be known as black. So in a way, Dessalines was very postmodern. He understood how race and language are technologies for domination, and even said to some of his compatriots, we have our own language. Tiens bien à vous. Pourquoi chercher les autres? You see, we have a language. Let's use it. And it took many years for that to happen, at least on paper. So in '87, at long last, almost 2 centuries after Dessalines, we have laws on paper that make Haitian Creole official and national, right? And as you see here, Article 32 also says that education is to be offered by the state. Now, if you put 5 and 2 together, it means that the state must teach in Creole. if Creole is the one language spoken by everyone, and if the state's responsibility is to teach the masses, then teaching must happen in Creole. So now I want to go into geopolitics, and I want to show you why it's been so difficult, both from within Haiti, but also given the world order issues, including Francophonie in France, why it's been so difficult to implement those articles. Okay, so this is now you're going to see President Hollande, the former French president, in a dialogue with President Martelly, who was head of Haiti until last year.
Sujet de développement parce qu'il y a des coopérations importantes. Le président Martelly va en Nous avons évoqué les sujets de développement en Haïti, des sujets politiques aussi, sujets de développement parce qu'il y a des coopérations importantes. Le président Martelly va rencontrer des entreprises françaises. Il y a à la fois un projet actuellement en développement pour l'hôpital, pour le développement des quartiers d'Haïti. Et moi-même, j'aurais sans doute aller en Haïti l'année prochaine ou en 2016, mais le plus tôt sera le mieux. Enfin, il y a la francophonie, c'est un lien majeur que la langue française permet d'avoir avec Haïti. Et nous faisons en sorte qu'il y ait dans les lycées qui sont construits aujourd'hui en Haïti plus d'enseignement en français par des Français quand c'est possible, par des francophones, parce que nous ne voudrions pas que ce qui fait l'identité d'Haïti, la langue française, puisse se perdre. La question des élections, par exemple, le renforcement du système éducatif en Haïti, parce que parler de reconstruire Haïti à avoir aussi avec reconstruire la mentalité haïtienne, l'homme haïtien, donc l'éducation, qui est la promesse faite par le président à travers un partenariat où, par exemple, des professeurs à la retraite pourraient venir à Haïti et nous aider à fournir l'éducation adéquate à nos jeunes haïtiens. Ce serait assez intéressant parce que c'est un passage obligé pour des jeunes.
in the immersion schools. Well, I think the key difference is that, so in the US, when you go to an immersion school, the teachers, typically they speak the language fluently, right? But the issue that you find here is that in Haiti, 95% of adults and children, they operate in Creole. This is so the immersion really happens in Creole, not in French. So there is really no immersion in fact, as you can see from the first example, the teacher was correcting the children about bleu, blé, couleur, couleur. That teacher doesn't speak French fluently herself. In the next example, that teacher was teaching liaison, and then using examples that have nothing to do with the kids' everyday life. That's not immersion, you see. So I think that's the major difference between the success of immersion, say, in the US versus the failure of, in fact, it's not immersion really. It's on the contrary. Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for this inspirational talk. For a grad student, the application of linguistics and problems in the real world is so refreshing here out of this field. I have two slightly related questions. So your work has kind of brought me to think about, is it time to think about the label of pigeon from the perspective of third wave sociolinguistics? Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on pigeons and the labels that are assigned and judgment values and things about those? My second question is, what's the next battle for grad students like myself against colonialism and neo-colonialist attitudes and linguistics?
Those are two big questions. So the first one is easier. So in terms of labels, I don't think it's the label itself that's the problem. It's the baggage that comes with the label. You can use the label without the baggage. I mean, right? So in Haiti, we call our language Creole, but most Haitians don't think of the linguistic baggage that we linguists have created around that concept. In fact, I didn't mention that because of time, but we have lots of proverbs in Haiti where the label Creole is used very positively. For example, we say things like Creole parler, Creole comprendre. So when you speak Creole, you really get to be understood. We also say things like, actually about French, we say suspend parler français, which means stop speaking French, which means stop bullshitting. Yeah, so because in Haiti, when you speak French, you're bullshitting. You're not being honest because you know that your interlocutor probably won't understand what you're saying. You see, so there's another one that says Creole c'est langue racine, Français c'est langue achetée. So Creole is our root language and French is our bought language. And so, again, the label itself is not the problem. What's the problem is the belief system so you can change that. You can keep the label and change that. In terms of the next step, so as you'll be a faculty soon, right? So as faculty, you can, when you teach your intro to linguistics, you can not use those textbooks. You can boycott those textbooks, not use them. Or you can write your own textbook, you see, where you can present a more accurate view of Creole, but also in terms of mentoring. Because in fact, one thing which I often encounter is that this work that I'm doing as a linguist in Haiti is often not valued the same way that, say, my work in syntax is valued, right? So as a new faculty, you can perhaps explain to your students that we linguists, we have the potential not only to understand languages, but actually to do a bit more than that. You can actually, as Norman said, you can help make the world a better place. So, you can create new examples for your students.
Thank you so much for this very important work. And I guess one of the questions that I have is around how far to go in this direction, given that all of this takes place on the background of the concerted efforts by French cultural institutions and French governments to push But it's that kind of, that, the sort of assumption, that the use of, I mean, it's no longer that, these issues are also common, or that Nigerian, writers in the 70s were sort of made use of English as well. But because the language, or the colonial language itself is so loaded, with these ideologies that are pushed through the language, it makes it difficult to really be like, okay, well, we'll do Creole and French, because they're not going to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. But what I try to show is it's not just the French itself that's the problem. Because as you mentioned, so the English also carries its own imperial weight, right? Spanish, the same. In fact, if you look at the history of Spanish in the New World, Librija was very clear to the Queen Isabella that Spanish could be used to conquer the barbarians of the Americas. But I think that if we have students understand what's at stake and be able to master both the Creole and eventually learn what they need from the French and the English and the Spanish, hopefully they will not have developed this self-hatred. You see, I think that the problem is the self-hatred that you saw in this kid, right, who cannot do math and who's, he wants the French at all costs, although he's going to be pretty bad in mathematics. And another issue there also is the textbooks. The textbooks are written. So in Haiti, the textbooks are very colonial. So even Haitian history is taught with this pro-French bias, which is actually quite weird if you think of the history of Haiti, right? But it's because there were French Catholic orders that commissioned those textbooks, you see? And so that's going to require a revolution beyond language, even going back and getting rid of certain textbooks. So it's a huge challenge, but you're right. So we have to look at it from all these perspectives. So there's a group in Mauritius, actually. There's a student now doing his PhD, Nicolas Nashu, looking at the way that we can redo the curriculum, say in the case of Mauritius, taking that into account to make sure that we use Creole materials that promote a more Creole-centric view of the world than what Mauritius have gotten in the past, which is very Anglo or Franco-centric. So absolutely, we have to keep those issues in mind. Our language carries the ideology. In fact, the Saline, if you read the Saline text, he understood that. He understood that we might be independent, but if we keep using French the way that the French have been pushing in Haiti, we'll always be mentally slaves to the French. He understood that so well, actually. It's very impressive. Yes.
I was struck by your quote that the realization that study reveals some myths and maintain persistence today, and successfully shows that those myths have global so I venture to guess that there might be some more myths that are still out there.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I'm trying to think of what would be a quick answer because it's such a big question, right? I would say teach by example. That could be one very quick answer. And I think that maybe what might be useful is for linguists to have also training in anthropology and sociology as well. Because actually when I was in my thesis, I always look back at that. When I was quoting Bickerton approvingly, not realizing that I had counterexamples on the tip of my tongue, literally. You see? But it's because I was socialized into accepting this into Creole dogma. And it's only after my thesis, as I got to read folks like Frantz Fanon, Bourdieu, Foucault, Mene, that I got to better understand the way that the human sciences create these hierarchies, sometimes under the radar before we don't even know it. So that could be one way, is to have our teaching not strictly within linguistics, but also to open up to other fields as well. That could be one way. So as I teach undergraduates these two classes, Black Matters, and the other one is called Creole Languages and Identities, where we look at language identity. And that's, on the side, I also teach syntax and other courses. But when I teach these courses, I find it so refreshing to be able to open up and have the kids think of not just language as autonomous system, but also looking at the way they are embedded in systems that create and transmit power, and how they use as technologies for domination or liberation. You see, so maybe that could be one way to answer your question. But that's one very quick, spontaneous way. I think I would like to think more about it.
Okay, so then for pointing out the some languages have the parallels here and low, classes here, low zero, parallel. But I wanted to point out the parallels in terms of educational system, because similarly, a lot of the kids are not allowed to taught in
Yeah.
I wonder if you think that there might be insights from the successes you have with those who want to push for that.
Absolutely. I think, and I apologize for not having the right data about the courses involving sign languages. I should have done better research on that. So absolutely, I think that what I said about local languages applies straightforwardly to sign languages. In fact, I always remember when I going to Gallaudet once. That was an amazing experience to see students learning in sign languages, and I hope that it would be a model that would be applied beyond Gallaudet. And actually, in the case of Haiti, I think it's true for the Caribbean in general. It gets even more complicated, because so you have this barrier between French and Creole, and then you also have deaf kids who now they have a double whammy, because being deaf in Haiti carries all kinds of negative connotations, like it's a curse, you see, and that makes it even more difficult. In the school where I work, in Matenoy, in that pilot school with the kids, so they a couple of deaf kids, but even though they are well connected, so some of the parents work in the school, but they're not being taught, you see, because there's this other layer of prejudices that deafness is a curse. And I think that's it's not uncommon in the South, you see, so I totally agree. We have to pay attention to those as well. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.